In The Wrath of Becky, it largely delivers what is expected. The sarcastic, violent teenage girl who's killing nationalists who underestimated her. To summarize the film, Becky, with her faithful dog Diego, have been going into and escaping foster homes for about 2 years now, and with Becky being 16, she's preparing for her adult life. She gets jobs, but usually leaves them after she steals enough to move on. But now she's kind of settled in. She meets this woman named Elena who has a home away from the hustle and bustle of any type of city or town. And Elena gets Becky. She understands her in a way that doesn't necessarily replace Becky's mom, but does give her some kind of maternal figure, at least some sense of family. Which is why when there's some nationalists that drive in the form of Anthony, DJ, Sean, and Daryl, unfortunately, Becky once again finds herself dealing with these types. She disrespects one, so they decide to pretty much upend the life that Becky has for herself that has brought her peace. And so, because they decide to mess with her peace, she decides to get vengeance in a way that only Becky will. So as for why The Wrath of Becky is rated R, there's cussing throughout, as to be expected. The violence is graphic, which includes heads exploding, gun violence, and also there's even some violence against Diego. Sexual content wise, there's nothing seen, but it is made clear that Daryl may have raped a woman while he was doing tours in the Middle East. And lastly, there's drinking and also smoking. So, naturally, when it comes to The Wrath of Becky, one of the highlights has to be the violence. And what do you want to talk about? The heads exploding, bullet wounds, the use of a crossbow that goes right through someone's cheek. Wrath of Becky maintains the sense that Becky's not only a resourceful girl, but with 2 years' time passing, she's now much more formidable than she used to be. Now, unfortunately, there isn't much in the way of back and forth when it comes to any of these fights, so it's not like she's giving us real interesting Charlize Theron, Angelina Jolie type of scenarios, but maybe in the third movie, which this one does set up, she can have that kind of altercation. So the second highlight is that you can see progress in terms of character development outside of Becky when it comes to this entry into the franchise. Elaine is somebody who I feel is a bit more memorable than Becky's parents at this point. And granted, this is a new movie, so of course they're gonna be easier to remember, but I feel like Elena, with them talking about her being one of four children, making it seem like she likes the isolation of being in a house that's kind of away from each other, and also seeing her chemistry with Becky, it felt like they wanted you to care more than just giving you this cheap feeling of, oh, that's her dad, so of course she's going to want revenge and be angry about it. And I would even say villain-wise, I think what really was a benefit for the first movie was that Joel McHale and Kevin James were playing against types, since usually they're kind of likable, silly, maybe heavily sarcastic, but generally are seen as good guys. So to flip them and make into neo-Nazi types, playing against type worked well. But as for their characters, I don't remember nothing about them. In this movie, I think they tried to take a little bit further with Daryl being an army vet. I believe he was an army vet. He was definitely in the military. And then when you have the incels of Sean, DJ, and Anthony, alongside their general misogyny, bit of racism, and also, wanted to do that whole white male dominant thing. I feel like while Becky's definitely showing that it has a type when it comes to its villains, at the same time, it does seem like it's trying to develop the type, and I would say maybe in a way try to escalate things little by little, especially with the way this movie ends. So the last topic is just the low point, which is that the key that led to Becky's father dying is an afterthought for most of this movie, until the end, where then it gets to be set up to usher in a third film. That frustrated me a little bit, just because this key is such a vital part to all of Becky's trauma, and generally she is truly traumatized no matter how good at violence she is. She has now issues going to sleep and everything. So for them to not address this key, what it's for, what it unlocks, it's frustrating. And the fact that it's going to be pushed off to a third movie, it just seems like they just made this film just to keep the Becky name alive, or to hold the rights to it or something. Overall, I would say Becky 2, The Wrath of Becky, is more of the same, which can be frustrating as it dances around the one thing that could have gone to the sequel in terms of the key which triggered Becky's journey.